Grimes read it to you.
There you go. All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Let me get. Oh boy, we've added a button. Now you've confused me. Let's see. Go live here. What's this open sound? Oh, we get a soundboard now. Oh, that's super fun. All right. So, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. I got a couple few articles to kind of cover. Some of them are a little interesting, and then we'll get into some meat and potatoes on uh, some of the stuff Dave was talking about with the reauthorization House bill. He's definitely going to be the most well read at this point. We'll all get caught up at some point, but. Um, I do want to cover this one. This one's in Dave's backyard here. So New York City specifically, is rolling out permit flying for the city. And so operators must request a permit to fly the drone a month in advance. So you better know when your next job's coming up or when your next shoot's coming up. Must be insured and have prior authorization from the FAA. They must also indicate what exactly they intend to record, and the NYPD can deny any request as they see fit. And not only do you have to apply for this, but the permits are $150. So it's kind of pay to play. Um, so obviously, commercial drone operators are uh, uh, balking at this right now. So right now, there's it's banned to fly in the five boroughs, except for a couple of public parks. It looks like. So on June 2nd, they proposed a new procedure where hobbyists and commercial drone flyers could get a permit to fly drones and take aerial photos of the video and video of the city. Those are going to run $150. But you need to know, like I said, a month in advance what they're going to record, and must also alert neighborhood community boards and the city council members where they plan to fly the drones and post public notices of areas they intend to record. This is going ridiculously too far. I mean,
Oh,
two
but
things.
it's completely consistent with New York City.
Yes,
Remember, this is
100%.
this is the city with 35,000 NYPD officers, and
Hmm.
that's where it starts. So it's if if you don't have money, and if you're not a white guy, it can be a rough place to be. And so if you're a person of color flying a drone, forget it. You're in trouble.
So now, isn't the whole
Interesting.
city a no-fly zone to begin with? So
Yes.
this
Yes.
is possibly
Opening
a
it up
poor
a
attempt
little
at giving
bit.
some access to flying.
Right.
That's correct,
Right.
but it's done in perfect New York City form.
Yeah.
They're gonna make money on it. It's gonna take a long time, and if you miss your dates, they don't care. That's
Yeah.
your problem.
And here's the fun part. So, if you get denied after submitting your $150 fee, it's non-refundable. So you don't get that
Exactly.
money back. So they're making money either
That's New
way.
York. Forget about it.
So, yeah. So obviously, folks are pretty pissed off about this. The fines for flying a drone: $250 for first offense, and $1,000 for subsequent offenses. So, I mean, if you're, hmm.
My only advice, if anyone says, "Well, I'm gonna go up there and I'm gonna try it, or I'm gonna down wherever you're located," this is a bad place to do test cases of pushing the establishment, and because NYPD will come up with additional charges, and it'll get very expensive, and you will be incarcerated.
Otherwise, like $250 for the first offense. I mean, that's cheaper than having 3 applications denied.
Right,
Right.
or even two. So yeah, it's just a difficult thing. So,
Yeah,
as
and
Dave was saying, I mean, New York City is, when it comes to permits for different things, whether it be drones or for firearms or anything else, they definitely take the cake on this kind of stuff. So
right, and Bits Bytes has a comment. The city is not a quote no-fly zone, at least as dictated by the FAA. It's the illegal ag
Navigation. Yeah.
navigation that they're referring to. Absolutely right. However, you're up against NYPD. So, we could say, well, I have the right to fly here. And, that would be a mistake to take that position. And, as, you know, as someone who lives in New York. No, I don't live in the city. I live upstate from the city.
There you go. All right. So yeah, super fun.
I should also mention that there are a number of the organizations, including DSPA, looking into this, seeing if there's anything they can do to help. Drone Service Provider Alliance, DSPA, and that's Vic Moss and Company.
So this is they have now dictated new colors. So we know what blue UAS are. Those are and you're seeing this increasingly. So they've been the blue UAS program is a Department of Defense initiative to rapidly vet and scale commercial unmanned aerial system technology. So you've got the couple different things there, and basically this is U.S. made drones as opposed to drones made, and I want to word this somewhat appropriately. It's not just China, but it's drones made in other foreign countries who are decidedly not allies of the United States, essentially. So China has sold, let's see, created in response to the growing threat of Chinese drones. China is a major producer of UAS, notably DJI, and its drones are becoming increasingly sophisticated. In recent years, China has sold UAS to countries such as Iran and Venezuela, which have used them to attack U.S. allies. The Blue UAS program is designed to ensure that the DoD has access to the best commercial UAS technology to counter the threat from Chinese drones. So it's a way of vetting. There's a Blue UAS list of particular companies who are approved through that list. I believe Teal Drones is on there, as well as is it Skydio is on there? Yeah. So, but obviously this does not extend to things like DJI. Those are notably not able to be used in significant portions of federal and, at this point, some state governments. So anything that's funded by the federal government or by some states like Florida is one of them, and a couple other states as well are moving in that direction. So now there's the Green UAS. It's a new initiative from UC that aims to expand the number of commercial UAS that have been verified to meet the highest levels of cybersecurity and National Defense Authorization Act supply chain requirements. It's designed to be more streamlined and less expensive to the Blue UAS certification program. It's based on the same cybersecurity and supply chain requirements. However, the Green UAS program uses a more streamlined assessment process that is designed to be more affordable and accessible to non-DoD customers. So it's designed to be more affordable. It uses the streamlined assessment process that requires less time and resources. It's designed to meet the program requirements that don't have a DoD contract. So maybe like a state would, state governments would fall into this kind of category is the word I'm looking for. And they're just as secure as Blue UAS. But I mean, here's the thing: is you know, I don't know. It's a touchy subject, but I mean, are companies like DJI or what specific data are they gathering? Where are they storing it? These are the questions, and maybe some of the unanswered questions are the things that concern lawmakers. But at the same time, a lot of this stuff is easily defeated by just partnering with companies and going that route. So I don't know. It's a hit and miss
Skeptical
kind of subject.
of Green UAS. note that AUVSI is also the organization that's charging, what is it, over $800 for the quote FAA symposium in August.
Mm-hmm.
So they also are a strong proponent of remote ID and applauded the FAA for bringing remote ID out. And they have zero interest in recreational
Yeah,
UAS,
100%.
and so their focus is absolutely laser on commercial, as the statement in Green UAS says. It's to further the companies to be able to get out additional drones. What is also curious is that if someone thinks that our drones are secure from a cyber perspective today, then you know then they've got some education to do. So we'll see what, if anything, if AUVSI improved the cyber position of the command and control data streams from controllers to our aircraft, that would be a good thing. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's too
Well, and
bad
here's the
Rob's not here today. I'd be curious to see his opinion on this and how he was involved a little bit and um, with those states that were trying to pass regulations against Chinese manufactured drones, and like would they
Mhm.
then would search and rescue or police be able to use these green UAS versus the blue UAS, and
Mhm.
his thoughts on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, good point.
Well, and
Yeah,
here's the flip side that my concern is that you've got companies that have zero interest in recreational. However, most, if not all, of those folks started out recreationally, right? And that's the brain numbing exercise. It's like you are purposefully shooting yourself in the foot with your own future community of pilots, because if you're not supporting recreation, if you're not supporting STEM, if you're not supporting these initiatives to allow people to continue flying, whether recreationally or commercially, then what are you doing? Because you're literally, cutting off your foot just to push forward a minor initiative while not supporting the feeder communities, right? So whether that's in crewed aviation, or whether that's in commercial UAS or any of those things. So
Seems very selfish and not forward looking at all.
100%, yeah, with you on
yeah,
that.
and that
So
that definitely will be, that is and will continue to be one of our primary pursuits is STEM and education, and how what we do is a resource pool for the aviation industry.
yeah. All right. So this one is interesting. So it says Congress tables yet another bill affecting drones. This one via FAA beyond visual line of sight rule deadlines. Um, So the U.S. House of Representatives has added to Washington's flurry of legislative initiatives in recent months surrounding future airline drone and next-gen aircraft with a new committee proposal uh, that, among many other things, sets deadlines for creating new rules on beyond visual line of sight operations by UAVs. The House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee introduced the sprawling Securing Growth and Robust Leadership in American Aviation Act on Friday at 773 pages, and pledged to provide $100 billion in funding over the next half decade as part of the FAA's reauthorization. Are certainly eye catchers, but most of that spending would target airport improvements, increasing the efficiency of passenger and cargo flights, and preparing the launch of air taxi and other advanced air mobility services, and facilitating drone beyond visual line of sight. It
This
also
this is
proposes,
this is the Reauth Act.
yeah, it also proposes that most Washingtonian of miracles of making a regulator more effective and efficient through streamlining, and they're saying cuts, and reducing FAA waste, inefficiency, and unnecessary responsibilities. Well, I don't know what responsibilities the FAA still carries, but I mean, they seem to be offloading as much as they possibly can to other people. Um, so, for over a century, the United States has led the world in aviation safety and innovation, but our gold standard status is being threatened by increasing global competition, rapid developments in technology, a shortage of aviation professionals. Gee, I wonder why. and FAA's own inefficiency, said committee chairman Sam Graves in a statement on the enormous plan. So, let's see. As
Comment on
part
this
of
now,
it,
or wait until later, Josh.
no, we can dig into it now. I mean, we're here. So,
Okay. I'm looking at a page of text. Do you want me to display it, or
Well,
yeah,
start
please.
off with, yeah, if you can share it. What are we talking about? Why is
okay?
the FAA up for reauthorization? What does that mean? What are we hoping for?
The FAA is given a mandate as well as a budget on a 5-year period by Congress, and that is called the FAA Reauthorization Act. The last one was 2018, and there's now it is a bicameral and bi-chamber piece of legislation this year, which is a little unusual. So we have a House version and a Senate version. The House version is officially in our hands, as is the Senate. The House is trying to get this voted on and approved by the end of June, and the Senate hopes to come to approval. Then they have to get together with the committees, the two um, subcommittees on aviation and transportation, and then by September they want to have a voted and approved, agreed to single bill. That's our process and how this works. So great point. Thank you, Dan,
Yeah,
for
and
the
just
context of all
to
of this.
point out how important this is, the last time this happened, we got things like remote ID and everything that goes along with that. So huge things could really affect us in this Reauthorization Act.
Yeah, the quick and dirty of it is that the reauthorization sets the money for the FAA that they have to use over the next 5 years, and it also sets the tone that the regulatory body has going forward. So Congress basically gives the FAA its mandates for the next 5 years, what it wants them to work on, what it wants them to drop, that kind of thing, and then they are expected to move forward with that. And a lot of that stuff comes with deadlines, which the FAA blew all their deadlines this last 5 years.
Yeah, that was going to
Um,
start out with the comic relief on the deadline, which is on the screen right now. So this is Section 609, Beyond Visual Line of Sight, in the House FAA Reauthorization Act of 2023. This is a draft bill at this time. It is still in committee. So in general, no later than 6 months after the date of enactment of this act, the administrator and the FAA shall issue a notice of proposed rulemaking establishing yada, yada, yada. So they're going to do an NPRM on BV loss within 4 months. I think they're 2 to 3 years away. So we'll see how that works out.
Yeah,
Highlighted section. Go ahead, Blunty.
I was just gonna say, wasn't the last the last reauth was actually supposed to be in 2015, I think, right? And then it got, I believe, from what I was reading about, 2015 was the original expiration, and then they got multiple short-term expirations, and then the FAA Reauthorization Act of 2018 was the final settling for the 5-year actual reauth,
Yes.
I believe. Okay.
Yes, and then there was 2015 and 16. There was the famous Section 336, which was a carve out for recreation, and then that got repealed in the reauthorization of 2018. So that's why we have drones and model airplanes as aircraft under the authorization of the FAA, as dictated and mandated by Congress. So this is the one that worries me a lot. And let's see if I can increase this. Is that going to work?
It's pretty visible.
yeah, you got it.
Okay.
Good.
Establish protocols as appropriate for networked information exchange, including network-based remote ID identification and support of BV loss. You remember that we fought long and hard in the initial remote ID to get rid of networked remote ID. And we've been saying we're very nervous that network remote ID is going to come back, and it's going to come back as as part of unmanned traffic management. Well, here it is as part of Beyond Visual Line of Sight, and there are absolutely references to this in unmanned traffic management as well. And
Well,
there
and
is unmanned traffic
here's the
management.
question though is for beyond visual line of sight, And when the FAA is talking about beyond visual line of sight, what are they primarily focused on, right? Is this going to be drone delivery? Is this going to be, um,
Well, if
what
they don't
else? Could
change
it
their
be like
definition, it would
agriculture?
include flying with FPV. It would include
It could,
going
yeah.
behind a billboard. It would include everything.
And it also includes AAM, and so advanced air mobility. So this is from small to very large. So from small, from
So air
250
taxis
grams up
to,
to
yeah, yeah.
880,000 pounds was the classification that we were using in the BV loss arc.
Now, for us, if they
So
sort of changed the definition a little bit and didn't include like local beyond visual line of sight or FPV flying as part of this, then that changes things. But that's not what we're seeing yet.
Right. So here's the um, so this folks have heard about the characterization of something called Part 108, and that was a placeholder. It's nothing official, but we have Part 107, which is also known as the commercial drone license for to fly a drone commercially in the U.S. And then to fly true beyond visual line of sight, the recommendation was another level of education. That's what this is talking about. So this is now this is mandated. So this is Congress telling the FAA, you're going to do this. You're going to institute something, and so you can read between the lines here. This is the wording around Part 108. Then again, back on schedule for comic relief, no later than 16 months after the date of enactment of this act, we'll have a final rule.
Cool.
Right. Okay. So
Russian.
there's more in that. So if you want, I can stop. But this is
Nope.
that was the BV loss section.
real
No, I
quick,
think
I have
Go
a
ahead,
question.
Plenty. And
So
we're delighted to have you on this call, Plenty, and we apologize that we can't see you. So please do keep
it's okay,
interrupting.
no problem. Yeah, technical difficulties. Anyway, um, so in the original, I don't remember specifically, but do we remember if in the original version of when they told us we needed remote ID, like when they told the FAA, hey, you need to build in remote ID, did they also include something about networked remote ID? And then
No,
through the NPRM process, we fixed it, or it wasn't specific enough? The FAA made up all this stuff, and then we rejected it, right?
there was a remote ID ARC that
Okay,
predated the remote ID
reauthorization.
NPRM. The ARC recommended that the FAA consider either network or broadcast. And so in the NPRM, they instituted both. So you had to have both, which was
right,
ludicrous. So
gotcha.
happily, it was then stripped out to just broadcast.
But there's lots of
And
people
then the
still
other,
trying to get network remote ID back in.
so the other
Absolutely.
Well,
question is,
it's a moneymaker.
in the UTM stuff, there's a video that XJet went over that we might talk about or might not, but it's a UTM video from the FAA, and in the UTMs they talk about these lanes or channels. There's like layers of the sky where they would put these drones, these specific pathways and stuff that they'd fly. And I wonder if there can be a way to bend this to suggest that the network stuff only needs to happen, that those elevations are in those lanes or channels.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, unfortunately, so there is a whole UAS traffic management or UTM section, section 610 in the Reauthorization Act. That video is rife with misinformation, and so
right.
it mixes current regulations with "wouldn't it be nice if," and so I won't say fiction, but it's close. Um,
Gotcha.
so
I was gonna say I had never heard anything about these lanes or offsets or
and,
heights or
and
whatever,
what
right?
they're so what in the video, a number of the spokespeople are from Virginia Tech, great school, and they're doing great things in UAS. And what they're talking about are use cases that they're getting grant money for, and bless their hearts, I'm serious, it's a good thing. This is a good use of grant money to get some stuff done on a schedule, and why not have some engineering students work on it? So I'm all for that. but the way that it came across is it sounded like it was mixing in terms of, well, this is the way it's going to be. And so in one, when they were talking about Griffiths Air Force Base, I don't even know if it's probably no longer even Air Force, but it's still an airport up in Syracuse, New York. That's part of the New York State corridor, which is a test bed. So the part of the reauth is also the 7 locations across the United States where there are test corridors for this type of work. So it is
Okay.
not a blanket BV loss. So in New York, there's this 50-mile long corridor where you can go up and fly. And if you hear Nuair, Nuair, it's a not-for-profit that manages that organization. That's where Andy Thurling was working for a couple of years. So good group, doing some good things, but this video is like, whoa. If you don't, if you didn't have a secret decoder ring to understand what was going on in that video, and we may pull it apart a bit and do a fact and fiction on it, because I think it's really bad that the FAA published that video and got behind it because it says, oh yeah, we're going to do all of this. Yeah, I don't think so.
Right.
So so there is one of the things in the in here in the FAA Reauthorization Act is there's a reference to the recently published UTM ConOps, which I'm pretty sure is ConOps 2.0, and the recently published is August 2022. So I guess in government speak that's recent. And we've read it, we've participated. They also reference the UTM working group in the ASTM. So they're pushing, again, no later than 90 days action of this act. Administrators list feedback and stakeholders on the recently published UTM concept ConOps, that's ConOps V2 in the vernacular, and we'll have a final concept of operations no later than 1 year. So this is really important to us because the unmanned traffic management pertains to air mobility as well as small UAS. So this is all about bringing back network, remote ID, as well as setting up a federation of companies who are going to manage and charge for traffic management of the airspace for drones.
Possibly making it so you can't fly if you don't pay first, you can't take off, all that stuff.
Check, and
100%.
check. So this is where it gets really important for us to get very vocal about the need to carve-outs for recreational. So, so that's the UTM piece. Then there was starting around, I think it was 603, 602 was the UAS section. So that's where I focused. There were also other sections that looked of interest, but when I read them, they didn't have anything of benefit to us. So I just skipped past it. This is an interesting one. So the GAO wrote a scathing report that was cited in a number of the testimonies in front of Congress on the reauthorization bill. And so now the GAO is being asked to write another report. And so the Comptroller General of the U.S. shall conduct a study of technologies and methodologies that operators may under aircraft to detect and avoid aircraft that may lawfully operate under. So this is another one. It's like because DAA is all. This is all about the issues that we had in the BV loss arc and where we got into arguments with the helicopter community, AOPA, and ALPA. So it's not that I'm not drawing any lines. It's just that this is a highly contentious area and one that we have to pay strict attention to because, again, this is going to restrict our ability to fly. This is, same thing here.
Is there any way to put positivity in this at all? Is it possible that their conversation of detect and avoid gives us benefit for something like shielded operations, right? Like, if they force detect and avoid to be a thing,
I haven't, I try to be a glass half full guy. I'm struggling with this one.
So who
I mean, the
has to
hard part
detect and
is
who
like
has to avoid? If your drone has
that
to
was
do
unmanned
both,
aircraft systems. Yeah.
well. You're on an important point, Dan. It said in this mandate, it says that the drone will always yield right away to the crewed aircraft. So I'm sure that the HAI and ALPA people are celebrating that phrase in here
so that would mean
because
your FPV drone, your model aircraft would have to detect an airplane in the area and automatically avoid it.
check.
Check. And here's the
And
problem, right?
if it didn't,
So,
then you're liable.
and here's the problem, right? The amount of technology to broadcast a signal, like remote identification, minimal. The amount of technology that you would have to put on a drone to establish, detect, and avoid is insane. I mean,
It's larger, and so
yeah,
it's getting smaller and smaller. And you can look at Iris and companies like that, and it's awesome. It is getting to be micro, but you're absolutely right. We're not, we're just saying so when I say it's getting smaller, that means maybe we can have a drone that's a couple of pounds, maybe.
Yeah, the whole
right,
250 gram or less drone rules doesn't matter. You can't even fly anything less than 3 pounds.
Right.
right.
That's the implications here. So, and I'm not being an alarmist. This is what we were arguing about in the BV Loss Arc. So it's depressing for me to see this codified in the reauth. Let's see the next section: remote identification alternative means of compliance. So I got excited. I was like, oh great, there'll be a carve out here. I don't think so. So this again is come up with a report to determine the feasibility as to whether unmanned aircraft manufacturers and operators can meet the intent of the final rules or alternative means of compliance, including through network-based remote ID. So
Now,
it's
if
not
So you
like
don't have to broadcast, but you sure have to connect.
right. So
now
it's
if
not
they
like
were saying an
oh
alternate means of
you didn't
compliance would
mean
mean
FRIA.
you could have a home-built aircraft flying Part 107 and use a remote ID module. That would be a great alternate means of compliance.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So
But they got to sneak
Uh,
in that network-based remote ID any place they can.
right. So we've seen it, 2, 3 times already. So this is obviously a recurring theme that is bad. Okay. Acceptable levels of risks. Trying to remember why I picked this one up. Oh, I think this one was that's
acceptable
right.
levels of
This is
risk.
TLOS. So
Yeah.
here's my here's the positiveness. if the FAA selects target level of safety as the acceptable level of risk methodology, this would be positive. So this would say, okay, we're not going to use weights anymore. We're not going to use kinetic energy. We're going to use a more modern methodology that we put forward in the tasking group 11 with the AC, and brought forward largely by Google Wing. Great thought process, and it uses the notion of frangible aircraft parts. So it's thinking about really what's the damage that an aircraft could do to a person. And if you know anything about Google Wing delivery drones, the fuselages are made of foam, so they don't kill people if they run into them. So good work. This one could be a hugely important to us because this could say we're running much larger drones, but they're safe because they can break apart, or they're not going to image people or injure people because of the appropriate measurements. Then I
Can
copied in.
I
Go ahead.
sorry. If
No,
I'm
no.
gonna say positive things, then I gotta say negative things. That also could mean that they have a bad level of acceptable level of risk that they decide to use some even worse methodology, and then
Yes.
we could lose 250 gram exception. So
Without a doubt. And in fact, the recommendation and the framework that we were commenting on in TG11 said that they wanted to simply take the crewed aircraft numbers of fatalities per year and change it by, I think it was 3 orders of magnitude, if I'm not mistaken. So whatever the number was, so just use the acceptable level of fatalities per year and alter it for UAS. And of course, when you're multiplying zero, your head explodes. So it's, what are we trying to achieve? So yeah, we're up against a bureaucracy, and um, we need to educate people on the benefits of target level of safety.
And
That's the nicest way I can say it.
if they go too far deep into the weeds of like velocity and mass, and you could get like, oh, you could fly a 50-gram drone at 40 miles an hour, but you can't fly a 200-gram drone at 25 miles an hour, and all kinds of crazy rules.
As Tony Nanini's description, when you're using kinetic energy, is which would you rather be hit with, a bullet or a basketball? A basketball being thrown at you or a bullet being shot out of a rifle. They both have an equivalent kinetic energy because the bullet has a very low mass and a very high velocity. And the basketball has a comparatively much higher mass and a much lower velocity. So, hence the common sense and the we need something reasonable for an acceptable level of fatalities.
Reasonable. That we lost reason a long time ago.
Yeah,
So
I'm with you on that.
in here there is a fair amount of money for training, and so along the lines of STEM and things like that, I highlighted this because we work closely with Flight Test. They have a STEM program. This caught my eye. So and most of this is for college level. I don't think I found anything that had not a dollar, to primary or secondary education. All of this was collegiate, which is not smart, but
No.
that's what it is. Okay. More. Oh, and then as I mentioned earlier, I think we were just starting up termination of Advanced Aviation Advisory Committee. So you've heard me for the last couple of years talk about the DAC and the AC, Drone Advisory Committee and the Advanced Aviation Advisory Committee. We were a dozen of tasking groups that we're on. The Secretary of Transportation may not renew the charter of the Advanced Aviation. So okay, so that's giving the FAA the authority to terminate the AC.
Is that actually saying you can decide not to, or is it saying you may not renew it? You can't do it.
No, you will not. It's
May
not
not
a, it's
renew the
not an
charter.
ask, it's a tell.
Tell mandate.
Yeah,
Right.
you will not renew this.
Interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, that does look like an amphibole to me. Okay, so let's say that it's dead, muerte.
Yeah.
And this is no surprise. We were hinting at this because we said, isn't it interesting? At the last AC meeting, there were no new tasking assignments. Okay, so they replaced it with a brand new and shiny advisory committee with 12 representatives. And the level of recreational representation in the 12 members is 0.
Commercial operators, manufacturers.
Right. Counter unmanned. So this is cool, right? So it's good. Okay. RSS, these are UTM, or unmanned traffic management companies, right? These are the companies that were the federation of companies that will be running the unmanned traffic management. All right. Yeah. Community advocates.
we get community advocates.
But we know that this will probably be a UVSI.
Yeah, of course it will.
Yeah, don't be silly. All right.
Maybe we should form a union, and then we can get in on the labor.
Yeah.
Labor
I like that.
part of.
I like that. Okay. So this, unfortunately, Know Before You Fly, unfortunately, is a marketing campaign. It's not coding. So they're going to spend $1 million a year to tell us to use Know Before You Fly. And that's all I had out of the, that's it.
Notably, something that's missing is no mention of raising the 250-gram registration limit.
Nothing on lower the limit. Nothing on FRIAs, other than FRIAs will be managed with priority.
Right.
Nothing overall. Just effectively nothing on recreational. So
Well, we already heard
Oh,
recreational rules are done,
I
so
did.
why
I
would there be?
did. Yeah, that's right. I did not include, but it is part of this in here where it's. So we all remember that in the Reauthorization Act 2018 talked about up institutions of higher education, and that explicitly that was defined by the FAA as meaning college level institutions. They have amended that to add primary and secondary schools.
Mhm.
That is positive, and Tyler Dobbs of the AMA has been pushing that. So our kudos and thanks to the AMA for getting that added in. That is a positive.
So just quick glance at, because I pulled this up, and again, fresh reading literally as Dave is talking, but in the entirety of the recreational operations, they are amending some words. They're inserting some clarification, and they really added the FRIA portion in which they will, like Dave said, address those with priority, supposedly.
Yeah, whatever
Um,
prioritize means.
Right. So,
Whose priority?
Right. Right.
so,
And
and
we
that's the
remember that
extent
their
here.
target is 4,000, not 79,000, which is our estimate of how many FRIAs would make sense.
And this is the House, right? So, have we seen hide nor hair of the Senate version?
Yes, we do. I've not cracked it yet.
Okay.
We have the official version. So again, our thanks to the AMA for getting it to us a couple days early. We appreciate that, and we also now have the official version that Blunty found up on the web. So
Perfect.
they're both coming out of the aviation subcommittees from the respective chambers.
Right. All right. Well, I mean, there's a lot to digest over the next little bit. So, and Dave, mainly process here, same as always. We digest what we can, get calls to actions sent out as quickly as possible, and then
Right.
this is going to be a hardcore reach out to your congressperson kind of moment, right? So we'll get through this quickly.
Right, because any
And
changes to the bills will happen now,
right,
post signing. So right now, I'm sure, this is my speculation, but you've just finished a document at 770 pages. You're trying to get it voted and approved on in the House, and the House is not a functional organization right now. So that's challenging enough. Then once you get it approved, then you have to get together with your counterparts in the Senate with their approved bill and reconcile to a single bill. So it's at that point of reconciliation, probably July, that we have a small window, a possibility of asking for some changes. But
right.
of course,
So
the level of noise will be very high for the staffers working on this.
if we expect a stall, like we talked about, like where we get this like 2 to 3 year stall, where does the stall happen in process?
I'm sorry, I'm not
Well,
following the
So
if
like
context.
this
we
doesn't get
talk,
approved,
Oh, I don't. I think it will get approved.
well, we talked
Yeah.
about how you said you expect it to take maybe 2 to 3 years for this to all go through or whatever, right? Like we
That's
talked about,
just
like
the
where the original FAA reauth was 2015, but we got extended by short. You know what I mean? Like we talked about, and then we got
Yeah, they could
2018.
have a continuing resolution to keep up the budget and continue on with the previous. But I think that the entire Congress would meet with such frustration, it would not be prudent. I mean, the Senate vote on the 2018 reauthorization was 100-0. So it's akin to voting against uh, a uh, a defense bill in time of war. I mean, I think we saw during the NOTAM debacle earlier this year how sensitive our country is to disruptions in our aircraft industry, including airlines, especially airlines.
and so Blunty, when Dave earlier was talking about some of this stuff would take years, in this draft bill, they say the FAA will do such and such in 4 months. And we were saying, oh, they're not going to, the FAA won't
Probably
get
3
their
years.
things done that they're mandated to do for years. But this bill will get
Okay.
passed.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? So they've got these dream dates, and we know how the FAA operates, and if they're going to be
There's
trimming
no
the fat,
consequences.
essentially.
No
No,
consequences if they don't
never
meet
any
those dates.
consequences.
So
Yeah.
Right.
So, but yeah, that's the big thing, and I agree with Dave that this will probably, in some form or fashion. I mean, the deadline I believe is September that this needs to go through by. So,
Start of the
I
new
would,
fiscal year.
yeah. So, um, you know, it's going to need to move fast, and the fact that it's coming out this late, I think, is the stressors of what's going on right now. So we'll see what happens. We're definitely going to dig into both of these and see what we can glean from them. And I mean, the good part is that it doesn't seem like they're radically changing recreational at this point, but what that looks like on the other side of it remains to be seen. So yeah, thoughts, ideas.
Yeah, we may. I mean, it's sounding to me like we may be pushing. I never thought I would hear myself saying this. Something akin to a Section 336, a carve out for recreational.
Mhm.
Something that says that we can continue to fly recreational UAS for into the future.
Well, and here's the thing too, right? So the key part of 336 originally is that they weren't allowed to make new rules, right? And the reauthorization of 2018 removed that. They struck that,
Right.
and then started
So
started us down this
and
path, right?
so an expansion of 44809 is probably what
Mhm.
we're we'll look at, and probably around network remote ID, and so that 44809 forever requires, as long as the mandate exists, requires broadcast remote ID. That would be very beneficial.
someone asked earlier, talking about rejection of FRIAs. Since our last meeting, we've had more FRIA rejections, correct? I think Alex at least has had a few. The FTCA has had some more. The FAA, as far as we know, has not and probably cannot yet approve any, but they can find reasons to reject them, such as, oh, this is over a private residence, so tough luck. You can't have a FRIA in your backyard. We're just flat out saying no to those, which we
Right.
don't agree
Yeah,
with.
and
No,
TechCheck said that
100%.
Joshua Bardwell got rejected. Yeah, that was ours. We submitted that for Joshua. Alex did.
And
It
here's
was
the flip
rejected
side
for the
too,
same
right?
reason my backyard was. It's just very generic. Said, oh yeah, this looks like a personal residence. That's not allowed as a FRIA.
Right, but there's a difference here too, right? So Joshua Bardwell conducts business from the same place where he resides. So, I mean, essentially, eh, is it a commercial property? Is it a residential property? Is it a blended property? And should that
He has
count
more
towards?
other people flying at his property than I do, but
Right, 100%.
Right.
So,
And so that from a process perspective, what's happening to us now is we're getting denials, and it has a very, very brief rationale as behind the denial. And then when we ask a question, we're directed to the generic FAA, CBO
I think it
email
was
address.
FRIA at FAA.gov, but yeah.
So it's a generic, and there it appears that that's probably gets handed out to a ROTA, and so we're not really sure if the person who handled the first application is the person who we're talking to, but the responsiveness has been near nil. Now Dan did get one response, so
When somebody higher up the chain referred the message to them, I got a very quick response for 1 day, and then any more
and then
responses after
was
that
it.
disappeared.
Right, none. So imagine you're going into a Department of Motor Vehicles. You want to get your license, or you want to get your Harley registered, and you go up to one line. They tell you to go to another line. You have to go to the back of that line. Well, this is worse because there's no line. You're not sure. You know where the building is, but no one wants to talk to you, and no one will answer a question, and you won't get the form, and you have to guess what the blanks are on the form.
You go
It's
take your
about
number,
like-
but your number's never called. So
right, right.
Yeah.
So we're
And
working
that's if
on
you
the
can get
on the
somebody who
process.
knows how to get in the building. Will tell you how to get in the building, because otherwise you're
Right.
trying to figure out which door actually gets in the place you're trying to get.
Right. So we're not sitting quiet, just saying, "Oh, woe is me." We're taking action. We're escalating this up the chain in the FAA. Surprise, surprise. Executive management in the FAA is being very quiet on this. So we're really we're being professional about it. We're asking civil questions, but we're working it up the chain.
and the only recourse seems to be if you get a rejection, submit a new application and change it in some magical way that you think it might get approved this time.
Right, and the turnaround so far has been the median period has been about 6 months. So yes, some of the tail conditions we are hearing about faster turnaround on a resubmit. That's good, but we haven't. And as Dan said, we have not heard of anyone, and we've polled the other three CBOs, STEM plus C, FDCA, and us, or the other two, I should say. And none of the three of us have received any approvals. I have
We
not
assume
asked,
the AMA,
AMA.
has not had an approval, or they would be telling the public that they have approvals.
Agreed. And we do feel that the programmatic environmental assessment, or PFRIA is a probably a requirement or requisite checkbox that the FAA has to check before they can approve a FRIA. We've asked that question. Is that the case? We do not have an answer to that question.
And we think that is in sometime in July that process, the period they have to wait for that to happen,
That's right.
is done.
Yeah.
And
So, right. So we think July, August is the period when the FRIA will be put in place, at which point they will start approving.
and that and then most places will need to go through part of that assessment at least. But it looks like, from the way it's worded, they say existing flying sites, which isn't defined, but we assume that means AMA fields get a pass, basically. So we would expect to see that at that point, we see a rush of AMA fields. And we can only hope that we find a way to convince them that us telling them somewhere is an existing flying site means it's an existing flying site, and we can get them to approve it through the PIA process.
Right.
Well, and here's the fun flip side to all of this, guys. Is the FAA hasn't had an actual director in 2 years. So it's been acting director.
Billy Nolan was there for a little while. He was acting.
Well, he was acting, and now
Right.
we've got
now he's got a good job in the private sector.
Of course he does. And now
Archer
we got
Aviation.
Miss Trottenberg, Polly Trottenberg.
Yeah. No aviation
so
background.
and I I'm just gonna toss this out. I don't know if anybody saw the original nominee before this getting interviewed in front of Congress couldn't even talk about any of the regulations, and they even brought up Part 107 in the questioning, and he just had no clue. It's the most cringiest, saddest piece of congressional testimony I think I've ever seen. So
Yeah,
Well,
I'm trying to figure out, like if you're up there and in the Beltway, and if you get recommended to be the administrator of the FAA, it's like,
do a little research
did
before.
I piss someone? Did I piss someone off? Is that why they're putting me up for this?
I think one of the funniest things about that is you rarely get to see, like, you see a bunch of those people you work around and work with when you work with the government, but like you don't ever get to see them on a stand saying they don't know the things they don't know. So that was kind of fun part of it, right? Because they don't know a lot of this stuff, but you don't ever get to see them put there and ask directly, and they have to answer. So that,
like,
to
here's
me,
the
that
hot
was kind
seat.
of fun. Yeah.
So I mean, we're not exactly sending our best. So
Okay, so KBS Ken posted a
Supposed to be
URL
listed
with
here.
FAA UAS Data Delivery Service. I've not checked that site, but we have checked all of our individual dashboards, which we access via Drone Zone.
Yeah, and the FAA is supposed to put any approved FRIA on the facilities map, I believe. I don't know how.
I'm
I
not.
mean, that could be delayed, but
Sure.
Okay, here we go. Let me just share this real quick. I'm gonna pull this up. So, going live. So this
Well,
is the
so
recreational flyer fixed sites.
so to be clear, fixed sites are defined places inside of controlled airspace that you've defined as a flying
and
location, and
there's
they're
an
not the
agreement.
same as a FRIA.
Yeah, there's an
Yeah.
agreement that they have to fly there.
And a fixed
Yeah.
site is not a FRIA.
Yeah,
But
so
they
that you
can
could
be
have a
both.
fixed site and a FRIA. Yeah, to get a FRIA in a controlled airspace, you need a fixed site, I believe, is how it works, something like that.
Yeah, in the advisory circulars, it could be the Venn diagram could be two circles. Now, per the reauth, it sounds like they're going to be completely coincident.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it doesn't look to me like FRIAs are shown on this site
No, it doesn't look like it either.
because it's only the fixed sites, flight restrictions for UAS, and then a facility data map.
Which
So
is
I would imagine
that's
it will show up here when there are
Yeah,
approved
we
FRIAs. I would
were
hope there'd be
told
another category for data.
that they would show up on the facilities map, like where it shows the height restrictions and controlled airspace and everything.
Like, okay, so that whole big map eventually there. Okay, so then you
Because I
will be
think
able to
some
filter.
AMA sites show up on that map if you zoom in.
Fun.
I'm working on it here.
There's a filter, so maybe you can find. Let's see.
So this is
Nope, that's not what.
Boy, I'm impressed. I've never had the facility maps website stay up this long.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
it works well for me. I don't know.
It must
This
be
is
new.
actually just the data. This is not the actual map.
Ah.
So this is just giving you. This doesn't have the height restrictions or altitude restrictions or anything. This is just the data off that map. But I mean, you have to zoom in to find stuff. I'm just looking in and around. Yeah, I'm not.
Anyway, as far as we know, yeah, there definitely have not been any approved FRIAs.
It-
I'm sure
and if
we
you-
will.
If you do go to the map, you can zoom in and find recreational flyer fixed sites. At least are on those maps. They show up as like little blue dots you can zoom in on.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So definitely interesting information. So
Thank you.
all right, guys. We'll keep a watch on the space. We will be in Flight Fest this
And
next week.
other things we're working on as well is we've just submitted comments on BV law. So the FAA asked for comments that were due June today, and we put them in 2 days ago. Next on the docket is comment on the new noise policy. That's due July 31st. That one's pretty important, and it sounds like, wow, that's goofy, but the number one crewed aircraft issue is noise. So lots of research here, and this is the FAA asking, should we have a new policy on noise? And our response is yes, you should. And so then we have to put through, well, what does that mean? So, like I said, and EASA, the European authority, has just put out a noise capability, and I'm pretty sure that noise was mentioned in the reauth multiple times. That appeared to include UAS, and it is absolutely a big deal with AAM, so advanced air mobility. So air taxis, and people are really jittery about, oh my gosh, where's there going to be a vertiport near my home? So that makes a lot of noise. So that will we will be the unfortunate beneficiary of that regulation. So this is very important to us. Drones aren't allowed to be heard more than
Super quiet
INB4.
props, right?
In before, drones aren't allowed to
yeah.
be heard from more than 50 feet away.
Yes. 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 And we may try to institute something instead of decibels, then maybe we'll get a Pascal rating. That's the newer sound way to measure things, so I understand. Okay, so as Josh was saying, 3 of us and then 4 for one day will be in lovely Malvern, Ohio at Flight Fest. So if you're going to Flight Fest, we hope to see you there. We're looking forward to it a lot. It is a fantastic event. It is a family-friendly event in that there are a lot of kids flying RC, and we're there to help bring FPV drones to people's awareness. There's a lot more of augmented RC model airplanes. They put flight controllers in them. They put FPV cameras on them. So the notion of it's a drone is becoming a shorter bridge. And so then we'll have a number of we'll have 10 gates up, and we'll fly casually, no races, just to give people a feeling of flying through gates, and probably fixing a couple drones like we did last year nonstop. So and we'll be in the Pilot Institute booth, as well as in probably under a build tent as well, and we'll set up stations on the field. So we're looking forward to being there. And the host's flight test is a great bunch of people, and we're excited to be there. And hopefully we can play with one or more of the flight test broadcast modules.
Yep, 100%. All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us. We will see you all in 2 weeks, and look forward to it. And we'll see what else we can glean from these 2 bills from the separate houses of Congress, and we'll get back to you on next steps after that.
Can't wait to hear your stories about Flight Fest at our next meeting.
Yeah, that'll be fun. All right, guys. Have a great night. Take care.
Take care.
Later,
Thank you.
everybody.